Bill Monroe and his wife Rose were finishing dinner one Wednesday of the week. They were sitting at the kitchen table where they usually ate dinner now that their twin sons had left for college and started their sophomore year. It was just after Labor Day, a wonderful time of year in Virginia as a rule. It was still possible to swim outside, but the heat had already subsided a little. Bill felt good when Rose said, "I'm bored." Bill looked at her. "Let's go to the cinema." They haven't been to a movie theater since COVID hit. But now the theaters were open, even if they were not thriving. She smiled slightly. "I didn't mean right now. I was talking about our lives." She smiled at her husband. He knew that smile. She joked with him. Bill smiled back. "Maybe we should find other people." She looked at him with a certain sharpness. She said, "You're kidding." "Yes, I wasn't kidding. It was my idea, what I was going to suggest. It's not a joke." Bill looked at her again. That smile. "But," he said, "maybe you should make it very clear if you weren't joking." Both of them were lawyers. Rose worked in her own firm, which focused primarily on family law. This meant divorces, mostly. Bill worked for a firm in Washington, D.C., where he handled white-collar cases. Prior to this, he practiced criminal defense of all types. So Rose and Bill could speak clearly if they wanted. Or they could be confusing, as Rose did with her opening statement. Rose said, "We've been exclusive for 23 years. They were both 44. And, "Now you don't want it?" Bill began to feel more than just irritated. His tone reflected this. "I want to experiment." "With sex?" "Yes. Sex with other people." This was already a statement, not a question. "Yes." Rose didn't lower her eyes. She didn't seem unsure. Her behavior was the same as in meetings with other lawyers. Bill didn't lower his eyes either. He looked straight into his wife's eyes. He nodded to indicate his understanding. He said, "Your proposal is..." She said, "I want to be able to date other men. Within our marriage. No divorce. No separation. Just a little side action, if you will." Bill didn't say anything. He still looked into his wife's eyes. The eye contact lasted what seemed like an hour, but was actually less than 2 minutes. Then he stood up and slowly walked out into the backyard. Rose watched him. She expected him to stop by the pool, but he didn't stop. He walked past the pool, past the basin house, and left through the back gate. He was in no hurry, in no hurry. It was a sedate step. Rose didn't expect. Well, not this. Possibly an argument, anger. She was annoyed that he didn't express any of this. He showed no emotion. It was like a business meeting. She planned to start with this approach and then mellow out. But he simply matched her stoicism and left. It was alarming, to say the least. She prepared for the conversation as if it were a trial. She collected her arguments and tried to anticipate objections and reactions. But he confused her. Crap. She absolutely did not want a divorce, although she knew it was possible. Now it seemed more likely than not. Bill was shocked to the core. But he was trained to hide such things, and he was very good at it. But he knew he couldn't maintain this behavior for long. So he left, and he kept going. He was wearing shorts and a t-shirt and sneakers. He had keys and a wallet. An hour after he left, he was in his office building. He entered and headed to his office. It was 8:20, just beginning to get dark. Some people were still working, but not too much. Lawyers, not the staff. As he walked, Bill cleared his mind of structured thoughts. It was a technique he had developed over the years to allow things to surface. I'll deal with them later. Now that he was in his office, it was time to sort things out. As he walked, the things that popped up were mostly images of his life with Rose and the twins. But there were other things, too. Rose dancing with a young guy at a New Year's party in her office last year. 4th of July picnic that year when Rose went away for a while. Their vacation is on the beach. Rose's bikini was smaller than ever before, and she looked amazing in it. She attracted the attention of men. Bill was proud of it. But sitting in his office, He found himself crying silently, choking on tears. Bill was 6 feet tall with a medium build. He had long sand hair, brown eyes, and big hips. He was faithful to Rose throughout their marriage, although he had chances to cheat quite often. Until this evening, he had assumed that Rose was faithful too. Now, Rose was also quite tall, but with a slender figure and a beautiful face, adorned with a mop of dark brown hair, often messy. She looked much younger than her age. Bill was sure she had a chance too. He thought that perhaps it was some such chance that prompted her proposal this evening. He wondered if she had acted yet, because when he analyzed his impressions, his analysis was that she had someone specific in mind when she made this proposal. He didn't believe that her passion was limitless. There was some guy to at least activate this passion. He also came to the following conclusions. First, Rose was unhappy, to some extent, with their life together, probably with sex. Second, Rose will make an effort to change this, and she will not answer minor changes. Third, it is very likely that she will have sex with another man or men. Fourth, it is unlikely that she has already done this. So, he had to decide what he wanted under these circumstances. It was clear to him that his ideal was for this to never happen. And what? He assumed she was proposing an open marriage. Both are free to change. If not, the marriage will end, and she would know it. So, open marriage. He began to think about what he would do if this agreement took place. There were 2 women he would like to play with. One was a younger, single woman, Mary Clifford, a fellow volunteer at the food bank and shelter where he worked twice a month. He knew that she was interested in him, despite his marital status. The second was another lawyer at his firm, a divorcee, about his age. Nora Stanton, beautiful. He always had the impression that she would agree to his proposal, especially if he told her that his marriage had opened up. And he knew that there were other women who would be open to him. But there were many, many men who would have happily slept with Rose. There are many more of these than there are women for him. He decided that he needed to gather information without asking Rose. He needs to know what she really wants if this is a specific person who. While he was thinking this over, he stood up to go to the men's room down the hall. As he passed George Bailey's office, he heard him say, "Rose." Bill stopped a little to the side. George said, "What?" He said, pause. "Just left? How long ago?" Another pause. "So you have no idea that?" Pause. "I can check. I'll be back soon." Bill knew that George was going to see if he was in the office. He ran back to his office and waited. Of course, George stopped by. He said, "Bill, why are you here so late?" George was younger, maybe 34, single, quite large, with a blonde ponytail. He was a partner, but only recently. Bill didn't want him at the firm, but they outplayed him. Bill believed that George's presence in the office was disruptive because he was sexually involved with 2 women on staff. Now it seemed that George had gotten to Rose, or was about to. Bill answered George's question with an expressionless, "Business." George nodded. He said, "Is something wrong, Bill? You look upset." Bill knew he didn't look upset. George was a bad liar, not so good for a lawyer. Bill said, "I'm not upset, George, but you look upset. Why?" Bill told the truth. George really looked upset, and in an instant he understood why. Everyone in the firm knew that Bill kept a gun locked in his desk drawer. He's been doing this for a while, ever since a client attacked him while discussing a case. Bill thought George was afraid. Bill smiled at George and moved his hand from the top of the table to his hip. George said, "I guess I worked too hard." He stepped back, turned, and walked down the corridor to his office. This time he closed the door. Bill, who had not opened the gun box, now opened it. He pulled out his 9mm Glock and checked it. He stood up and tucked the gun into the front of his shorts. His t-shirt covered him, but anyone who looked at him could see he was there. He walked around the office and found that he and George were now the only ones left in the office. He walked to George's door. It was unlocked and Bill entered. George looked at him and said, "It's nothing, Bill. Nothing." Nothing happened. Oh, really? Well, I think you're lying. You knew what she was going to say today. We talked. I mean, there's an attraction between us. But what, George? When you say nothing, you mean no sex. But what happened? And don't lie, George. You're no good at it. George was silent. Then he said, we had dinner. We met on the dance floor one evening. Just danced. Maybe a few kisses. And now you want to sleep with her. I've always wanted this. Most guys would. You want to sleep with Nora. Here's your chance. George, I'll only say this once. You have no right to Rose anymore. Rosie, not for you, never. No lunches. No dancing. No calls or messages. Understood? No, I don't accept it. There is something between us. You have to get over it. Sleep with Nora. I have many options for influencing you, George. A lot. And they will hurt you. George stepped back and his eyes slid back to Bill's belt. But he said, we have security cameras, Bill. You would never get away with it. Maybe I don't care. He pulled out a pistol. It was lowered to his right thigh. George almost shit himself from fear. He pressed himself against the wall. He said, you win. I agree not to see her again. Bill thought he was despicable and really wanted to finish him off right there. But he would have to serve time, and Rose would get some other guy. Bill laughed at George. He said, I won't kill you now, George. But if I go to the other partners and complain that you've been stalking my wife, they'll quickly throw you out of the firm. In fact, it could happen either way. I said I agree. I won't have any more contact. Bill nodded. He said, if you're lying, George, and I find out about it, one day you'll be walking down the street and, boom, and you'll disappear, and that gun will still be locked in my drawer. Got it? Yes, you're a bastard, and a cruel bastard. Now you're being reasonable. Bill went back to his office. He put the gun away and left the building. It was 9:30 in the evening. He caught a taxi and went home. Bill went into the house to find out what Rose was doing. He also needed to pick up some things if he decided to leave. His car, for example. It was just a Civic, but he needed transportation and loved it. He returned home a little before 10 in the evening. He heard the vacuum cleaner running. Rose was cleaning the living room. It was her way of calming down when she was nervous. Bill clapped his hands loudly to get her attention. He waved her into the kitchen. The vacuum cleaner stopped, and she followed it to the same table where she had started this conversation a few hours ago. They sat down and Bill said, you can't have George. He won't answer your calls. Are you crazy? He's a partner in my firm, and he's an asshole too, and rusy. Rose turned white and then red. It was interesting to watch her face. She said, what did you do to him, Bill? Not as much as you and him, Rosie. Fuck you, Bill. I could throw him out of the firm for what you did to him. We've done almost nothing. But enough. What were the specific details of your proposal? She looked at him angrily. I could have other men. You could have other women, if that's what you wanted. We would. Be discreet. You went to dance with him, Rose. Not discreetly. It wasn't in a place where we would be recognized. But Rose, you should have known that as soon as I find out who you're sleeping with, I'll throw him out. It's one thing to have a boy toy as your personal trainer, but it's a whole different thing to do it with the guy from my work. One of the things I was going to say was that we wouldn't discuss our other lovers. Such stupidity. He would have boasted at work, and I would definitely have divorced you. She sighed. Well, can I have a boy toy then? I'll think about it, but I want to say that this will probably end our long relationship. Regardless, I will cheat too. Why can't we just, I don't know, ignore a few nights out, for both of us, and continue our marriage? Are you really that unhappy with our life the way it is? Yes, sorry, but yes. I thought we were fine. We have sex. More now that the boys are out of the house. Isn't he good? He's normal. He used to be great, but I need something different. Rose, you know me. Do you believe I would just have casual sex? Think about it. If I went with other women, what would happen? She was silent for a while. She started fiddling with her hands. She said, "That bitch Nora." Bill shrugged. "What would happen, Rose? You'd end up with her or that other one from the food bank. She's younger and really wants you. But you wouldn't have stayed with George. He's big and you wanted a thrill or two. We're opposites in that way. Almost like the opposite of sexual stereotypes. You were warned, Rose." She got up and went upstairs. Bill heard the shower turn on. He went to the pool house and took a shower there. He wrapped the towel around his waist and walked back into the house, going upstairs and going into their bedroom. Rose was in bed under the sheets. They made love. They were falling asleep when she said, "That was great. Thank you. But it doesn't change anything." "I know, it's sad, Rose. It doesn't have to be sad. We'll see. I have some decisions to make. Please don't secretly cheat on me." "Okay." Eventually, they fell asleep. On Thursday, Rose went to work as usual. Bill called his assistant and said he would be late. He had no meetings in the office. He researched the state's divorce laws. He came to the conclusion that if they separated, there would be no alimony, and one would buy the house from the other. He will probably buy out her share. It wasn't a big problem financially, but his boys will probably suffer, and the grandparents were all alive and well. None of them would approve divorce, but no one in the family would understand an open marriage, and he believed that they would find out sooner or later. The worst thing is that they would have to live separately without sex with each other for 6 months. He composed an email to 4 parents and saved it in drafts for later use. The boys would have to be told over the phone. He will decide when, but the sooner the better. If Rose was going to ruin her marriage, she needed to go through all the consequences. Then he sat down and wondered if he could stay with Rose if they both cheated. He knew other couples did this. He opened a browser and explored it. What he came to after 2.5 hours was that this whole idea of an open marriage is nonsense, and polyamory too. This was all just his due diligence. From the very beginning to the end, he knew that he could not do it. Maybe if he and she were younger and weren't exclusive for so long, something could be worked out. Or if they were very close to a certain group of people or another couple, multiple sexual relationships could develop without fatal discord. But maybe not. All this imagining situations where it might work only convinced him that his marriage was over. He opened a word processor and struggled to draft a separation agreement that included divorce. He printed it out, read it, and signed it. Made a copy for myself and one for Rose. He left a copy of it on the kitchen table. He then made a PDF of the agreement to submit the next day. He called the firm's bailiff and arranged for Rose to be served with the papers at work on Friday. Afterwards, Bill felt exhausted, but he went to the pool house and looked around. There was a futon sofa, and he made it into a bed. It was a double room. He needed sheets, a clothes rack, and a chest of drawers. All this would fit. He went to Walmart and bought everything he needed. He also bought a lock for the pool house's sliding door. He brought it all back and settled down there. There was already a microwave, a small refrigerator, and a 2-burner stove. It was 5 o'clock. Rose will be back from work soon. He went upstairs and put on his sports clothes. He left through the back door. He ran for an hour at intervals. When he returned, Rose's car was in the driveway. She was sitting at the kitchen table with papers in front of her. She cried. She looked up and said, "Can't you at least try? I thought long and hard, and I couldn't stay married to you if you slept with other men, even just one, even just once. I tried to imagine what it would be like. It would be very dangerous. Then no. George didn't answer my calls, but I have other plans for Friday. So be it, Rose. I'm so sorry we can't go the whole distance." She jumped up and ran upstairs, but then she turned and lunged at him, clearly intending to do real harm. He dodged and hugged her. He lifted her off the ground and simply held her. She struggled, gasping and puffing. Then she went limp. He whispered, "Can I let you go?" She cried, "I don't want you to let me go, Bill." Bill carried her upstairs, threw her on their bed, which was still their bed at this point. They looked at each other. He said, "I don't understand. Rose, you're breaking my heart." She was still sobbing, but not as much. Bill watched her calm down. She looked so sexy. She said, "Well, you brought me here. Now what?" He made love to her. She pressed herself close to him. She said, I had these desires. I couldn't tell you. I'm sorry." "Apologizing won't help, Rosie. You're mine now. Whatever I want, whenever I want. Got it?" "Yes, sir." Bill could see she was so excited. But he said, "Now I want an explanation of where this came from. I mean, we've been together this whole time. You're an outspoken feminist. What?" "My friend's boyfriend, her lover, did things to her. I eavesdropped a few times. I snooped once. And when I was in college, I let a wrestler, dominate me. But you are an outspoken feminist. Intellectually, I don't believe what you did to me. But you can do this to me any time. I made the wrestler promise that he wouldn't tell anyone. And I let him, whenever he wanted until he graduated. Is that why, George?" He was so confident. He knew what I wanted, and I knew he would give it to me. And also, he's a big, strong guy. I've always loved that. See you. That weakling. Coward. He told me he was a black belt. When he said that, it meant two things. Did you have sex with him?" "No, just talking. Little by little, the talking became heated, and I was going to let him do what he wanted. But did you scare him?" "Yes, for now, at least. I had a plan for tomorrow. 2 guys from the audience. One of them. He knew I agreed. Have you cheated on me before, Rose? Honestly." "No. I somehow suppressed it all. We had boys, but now they're gone, and I saw this video on my phone. But Billy, I just couldn't tell you what I wanted." "And you didn't really want this with me, did you, Rose? You were great. But you wanted it with some guy, not your husband, a big guy." "Yes, I admit it. Will I have to punish you again?" And he did it, and the result was quite impressive. They played all evening and fell asleep. On Friday morning, Bill woke up and took a shower. Rose joined him. Then he told her to prepare breakfast. She was getting dressed for work in the bedroom after breakfast. Bill looked at her. Her bottom was red. He pointed at it. "It hurts?" "Yes, a little." "No panties today. I want you to always remember who controls you." "Yes, Bill." She dressed without panties, and they went to work. Without panties at work, she quickly got used to it. She knew why she had these submissive desires. However, she didn't know what to do about it. She was absolutely sure that submitting to Bill would not be satisfactory in the long run. She felt like there were some men, not many, who could see what she wanted and what she would do. And if she had met one of these men when Bill was not around, she would have become his obedient woman. Sooner or later, this will happen. It was a dilemma. Bill also had some second thoughts about dominating Rose. It was fun, that's for sure, but he didn't think he could stand it for long. This woman had been his wife for many years. The things he did to her on Thursday night were so humiliating. Part of his satisfaction came from seeing this as retribution for Rose ruining their lives. He concluded that he could push things a little more, but also that there was a limit. He wanted marriage, not a master-slave relationship. He didn't see how the two could be combined. But he decided to try because the alternative was bad. On Friday evening, when they returned from work, Bill ordered pizza delivery. He and Rose were careful with each other. Finally, after the pizza arrived, she said, "I enjoyed it last night. You did too. But—" He interrupted her. "But it's not a permanent solution, right?" "No, Maybe a partial solution. She gave him a sexy smile. She said, "We know each other so well, Bill. Well, maybe I know you better than you knew me, but I know that I am in control of our sex life. Always have been, right? Right? Yes. Why, though? Why do you let me control you? I don't know. It's not like you always get what you want. But that's basically it. Isn't it? Who's in control now, Bill? So, that doesn't mean you can break your vows. And I don't crawl around and grovel like you do. You just have some control. I can break my vows if I want, anytime. The only question is what you will do. I told you, Rose. We'll finish. You didn't say why. I mean, I wouldn't throw it in your face, unless you wanted to hear about it. I don't see how it could work. Even if we never talked about it, I would know. You would have sex with another man, or men. Eventually, everyone will find out. So, you'd be embarrassed. Yes, yes, I would. Even if you slept with Nora. I couldn't. Keep my own wife. All I want is one or two more of these. It's not much if you get the same concession. Yes, it is, Rose. Rose deflated. No solution. And no sex now either. Bill walked out onto the patio. He sat there, considering his options. He concluded that he had only one option to file for divorce. Rose was going to cheat. They both knew it. They went to bed almost without talking. Bill then said, "I know you're going to cheat. I'm asking you to wait until we get divorced." She hissed, "Fuck you, Bill." He hissed back, "Don't sleep with me again, Rose. Never again." She got up and left the bedroom. She didn't return. Bill assumed she was sleeping in the living room. The weekend went pretty much the same way. They were cold to each other. On Sunday night, Bill asked her if she could refrain from cheating until they divorced. She said, "That means 6 months of no sex for both of us." "I know, but I mean, I wouldn't want to be a cuckold." "You wouldn't be if you agreed to my proposal." "Listen, I'm going to draw up a separation agreement if we can reach one. Do you want a house?" "No, I don't know. Do you want to?" "Yeah, maybe we could just use separate rooms. I can move into the pool house. It could all be finished in a year. I'll buy your share of the house." Rose sighed. She looked at Bill, her husband of many years. She thought it was a tragedy. Her inclinations and his moral code simply did not match. And her inclination and his inclination also did not coincide. It was surprising to her that they lasted so long. She suppressed her submissive side. She even somehow dominated Bill. It was weak, but it was there. She thought she could go further with this. She could make him crawl. She had known this for some time, but she held back from it because she believed it would end them. She said, "I'll draw up a separation agreement tomorrow, but I won't agree to be celibate, and you don't have to be celibate. 6 months. No way. Well, I guess we could lie, still have sex." Bill said, "Let me think about it. Are you willing to lie?" "Maybe. No. I want other men. Soon. Then we won't have to lie." "Okay. Well, I'm so sorry." Tears rolled down his cheeks. She hugged him. "Me too. But we'll get through this, I hope." "We won't survive this, Rosie. We won't survive this." Rose drew up a separation agreement. It was simple enough. Asset division, Bill purchases a house as part of a divorce. She emailed it to Bill. He signed and sent it back. She took him to court in anticipation of a no-fault divorce. Everything was done in one day. On Monday night, she cooked burgers and fries for dinner. Bill then went to the pool house. It was a comfortable enough place, but he felt lonely and sad. Rose was upset too. But then she remembered. 2 guys from her gym. It was enough to erase most of her low mood. She watched some PBS and went to bed. Bill received a surprise on Tuesday afternoon. Nora. She entered his office, closed the door, and sat down on his sofa. She crossed her legs. Very beautiful legs. She said, "I was looking at some documents yesterday. You and Rose have separated. Jesus, it didn't take long. Please keep it a secret, Nora. Okay, but I want one thing. You. Maybe tonight. Nora was of Middle Eastern descent, with dark hair and a beautiful, plump figure. She was also smart and lively. Bill often thought about what she would be like. But he said, maybe I'm not really. Bill, I'm guessing this breakup is about Rose. She's a warrior, right? Yes. I want to sleep with other men. Open marriage. These were statements, not questions. Nora, you are very perceptive. But still, I'm sure she'll be on a date by this weekend. You and I can beat her to it. Let's see how she can take a hit, not just throw one. And, Bill, you're going to have a fantastic time. She said, I'm at 7 o'clock. I'll cook something you'll really like, but we don't have to eat at all. She sang it. Bill remembered this from Taj's album. Nora gave him a sly smile, turned and walked away, swaying her hips. It was effectively the end of the day for Bill. He lost concentration. He left at 5, and Nora was there, getting into her Beamer in the parking lot. She pointed at him. Question. He nodded. They left. Bill went home. He thought carefully before giving Nora the thumbs up in the parking lot. He suspected that Rose and Nora had some kind of contact, perhaps even an arrangement. But he didn't know this. He thought it didn't matter in the end. If Rose set him up with Nora, then so be it. She wanted to cheat so much that she would arrange it. Bad outcome for him. She left if that happened. But if she didn't, she'd be in for a surprise when he left for dinner with Nora, and he wondered if Rose could take the hit. She wasn't at home when he arrived. He arrived a little earlier. He packed his overnight bag and put it in the car. Rose came home around 5:40. She came in and asked, "What are we doing for dinner?" Bill found this strange. This was not her usual question. "I'm going out for dinner. You're on your own." "With whom, I mean?" "I'm going to the borough. I think you already knew that, Rose." Rose blushed. She didn't say anything, so Bill understood what was happening. He said, "Rose, never here in this house. If you do that, I will react very negatively. Understood?" "I don't see why. This is my home too. If you do this, our agreement on the house will be void, and other unpleasant things will happen." "It's not fair, Bill." He screamed, "None of this shit is fair. You sleep with someone in this house, and you'll know what real injustice is." Rose retreated. Okay, damn. Before I leave for the date you set up, I want your word on it. Not today. Never. Is that clear?" "Yes." "Did you plan to do this here today?" "No, not today. But you can use the pool house for your meetings. I go to your boy toy." Bill turned and left the house. Soon Rose heard his Honda driving away. This didn't quite go according to plan. She should have known that Bill would suspect trickery between the women. But he also had to understand that this was only possible because Nora wanted him so much. Maybe he understood this. Meanwhile, she will have to wait until Friday to have sex with another man. She planned for Wednesday in their house in the guest room. But no. She called her gym boy toy Troy. She said, "I have to cancel Wednesday, but I'm free Friday after work and all weekend." He laughed. He said, "Me and Biggie, right? All weekend?" "Yes, if you two can handle it. About Rosie, we'll wear you down. But only with you. My husband will not tolerate me cheating on him in this house. You know, I saw him last month. I could deal with him. He doesn't seem all that strict to me. Just stay away from him, Troy. It's for your own good, trust me, and I don't want to get a divorce. I just want some variety. Okay? If you change your mind, let me know." He gave her the address of his condominium. Rose settled down to watch PBS. Bill arrived at Nora's house exactly at 7. She opened the door, wearing a blue dress and sandals. She said, well, you came." "Yes, Despite your devious agreement with my wife, I feel as if I have been sold by you, Nora. Sorry, Bill. She called. We talked. I'm not really paying for you. But, Bill, I would. She tilted her beautiful head and looked at him. Then I would be a man of easy virtue. She closed the door with her foot and grabbed his shirt. They made love. After that, Nora got up and said, I'm hungry. Me too. What do you have? They ate Nora's shrimp salad and Italian bread. Both were naked. They then returned to the bedroom and made love. Nora remembered her lover. Now they were lying next to each other. He said, Which young lover? Nora laughed. You don't think I kept it clean just waiting for you, do you? I have guys who like me. I suppose, but young lovers? Women in their 40s, sometimes like younger guys. I guess that's what's going on with Rose. She wanted George. I stopped it. Now, according to her, she has 2 boys. Oh, I understand. I don't know where she is. Found it. In the hall, silly. That's where I found mine, although I've never had 2 at the same time. They tried to act normal at work, but after lunch, George came into Bill's office, ostensibly to discuss business. After this discussion, George said, You slept with Nora. Bill didn't say anything. George said, All bets are off. Bill said, Not like that, George. I feel the same as before. No contact. George looked at him. While this duel of glances was going on, Nora entered the office. She said, Boys, don't fight. George flew out of the office. Nora said, What? Bill replied, George is very perceptive. He thinks we hooked up. He wants Rose. What did you say? No, I said no just like before. Why? Because he's an asshole. And he would brag about it, right? Yes, maybe that's the reason now. He was one of my boy toys, Bill. I stopped it. He's jealous. Oh, he was. She laughed. He's very good at sex. So are you. He's younger and bigger. That's what boy toys are, but they're not just eye candy. I stopped it because he was an asshole. It was at the very beginning when he came here. It's long over. I still don't want him to sleep with my wife. I agree. Bill, we had a wonderful night last night. We can do it again. But you know, I've been divorced for 12 years. I'm not looking for a permanent husband. Nora had a son, Timothy, who was in college. Her ex-husband Henry lived nearby. They shared custody. Bill wasn't thinking about permanence, but he had to admit that he could achieve this with Nora. He said, Got it. You know, Rose is going on a date Friday night. She says, and I'd really like some company. It's a date. Let's go dancing and have dinner, and then come back to me for the horizontal mambo. She gave him a lewd smile. It sounds good. He grinned at her. Rose was at home when Bill arrived on Wednesday evening. He entered through the front door, but only to go into the pool house. Rose stood in front of him. She said, You and Nora? Yes. You arranged this. I'm sure you'll get a report. You know, Rose, you and I are completely separated now. This is all a conspiracy. Even if you said you'd stop, I'd still leave. As for me, right now and forever, you and I are completely done. Bill went to the pool house. Rose was stunned by his reaction. She thought he would soften after sex with Nora. Wow, that wasn't it. She sat down at the table where she was preparing a roast for 2. She remembered the events of the last few days, and I saw everything through Bill's eyes. She realized that she was engaging in magical thinking, deep self-deception. A deep, intense depression washed over her. She was mourning the loss of her marriage, something she never intended to do. Rose sat crying in the kitchen for almost an hour. She then went upstairs to take a shower. It always lifted her spirits, but not at this time. While she was drying herself, her phone rang. It was Nora. Nora said, How did it go? Is he happy with the exchange? Rose burst into tears. She sobbed, "We broke up. We broke up, and I don't get laid with no one." The sobbing continued. Nora said, "I'll be there in a minute. Don't be so pessimistic. People say things they don't mean." She hung up and drove to Bill and Rose's house, a 20-minute drive. She rang the bell. Rose was in the living room, waiting. She stopped crying. Nora's statement that people didn't mean what they said calmed her down a little. She opened the door to Nora. They hugged as the door closed. Rose started crying again. "That was such a bad idea, Nora. So bad." "Calm down. You haven't slept with anyone yet. Let's see what we can do. Where is he?" "In the pool house. I think he's sleeping there now." "What did he say?" Rose described it. Nora said, "He feels betrayed twice. First by the fact that you were going to cheat, then by the fact that you arranged it to do it. Oh, and the third time by me. Damn. I could cancel everything, I think." But he said, "Yeah, baby, I don't know. I never should have met you and these guys from the audience. I put ideas in your head, and George too. My fault. Can you talk to him? Now." "Yes, tell him I was a fool. I won't do it." "Okay, I'll try." Nora walked towards the back door, towards the pool house. She knocked on the sliding door. Bill looked out and let her in. "What are you doing here?" "I called Rose to find out. Well, how it was when you came home. And she was so upset. I came. She thought she could have her cake." "She can have her cake, just not with me at the table." She was very clear about what she wanted. I was clear too. Now that you've agreed, she wants... What? "Okay, Bill, I admit what we were up to. But my part was because, you know, I've always been interested in you. She has something you can't give her. And I have to wait for someone random to do it. It won't work. She says she won't do it. I don't believe it. She can put it off, maybe, but sooner or later she will do it. I have accepted the fact that she and I are not sexually compatible. We are no longer suitable for each other. You should see what happens if she tries it once, just once, then talk. You tried it too." "This is sophistry, nonsense." "Why? How would it hurt you?" "This will ruin us, Nora. Maybe I'm a creep for feeling this way. I can't do anything about it. Neither can she. So we're screwed. The sooner she realizes what she's done, the better." "No hope? At all?" Bill shook his head. Then he said, "If she does leave this weekend, I won't need you anymore, Nora. I didn't know you and her were so close." "We weren't. What about now? We both seem to have lost you." She turned and left. Bill changed his clothes and went for a run. Nora stayed with Rose. They were both drunk on Chardonnay. We fell asleep in the living room with the TV on. All three returned to work on Thursday. Nora was late. Bill arrived on time. He made several financial adjustments in light of the separation. Nora tried to talk to him after lunch, but he brushed her off. He had his meetings and went home. Rose was late for work too. She didn't have a busy day, so she became gloomy. From time to time, she fell into deep memories of better days with Bill. She abruptly emerged from these dreamy dreams with excitement accompanied by despair. But by the end of the day, she was furious with Bill. He was unreasonable. Either he will change or he won't. She was going to cancel Friday's barbecue. But when she got angry, she decided to save the date. If her marriage died because of her whim, then she might as well enjoy it. She returned home, but did not see Bill. He was in the pool house. She knew it. She ate a small dinner and drank a bottle of wine. On Friday, she got up early and went to work. Excitement replaced despair, although maybe not completely. She got home at 5, got dressed for sex, and went to Toby's apartment. Bill saw her drive away. Meanwhile, at the pool house, it was Bill's day when he was supposed to be working at the local shelter. Mary Clifford worked there. She was a woman of average height in every respect. She was 5'6", slim, with short brown hair and brown eyes. She had a beautiful face and was cheerful and sincere. She worked at the orphanage on weekends and in the evenings. She worked as a high school physical education teacher. She was popular among high school students. Mary never married. She loved both men and women, but she had a long relationship with her boyfriend, Bobby Horton. He was basically a fool and didn't want to get married. She reached the ripe age of 30 without receiving a proposal from Bobby, so she stopped communicating with him. It was 2 years ago. Since then, she has dated men and one woman. She preferred men, but used women as a break from the action. Mary saw Bill enter the shelter's food bank office. He looked good as always, if a little sad. This alarmed her. Mary knew Rose for 2 days, some time ago, when Rose came with Bill to work at the food bank. She thought they were probably not right for each other. So when Bill looked sad, Mary sensed an opportunity. She always liked him, even though he was older. He was smart, handsome, and kind. Also strong. He could throw around boxes of quarts of soda like nothing. The two of them worked together, taking the food out of the bags and putting it on the shelves. It was hard work. They took a break at 11. Mary led Bill outside, turned and pushed him onto a picnic bench. She said, "Something is wrong with you. It must be because of your nasty wife." Bill was surprised, even shocked, but he was also intrigued. "How did you know that, Mary?" "I'm a good judge of people, and you know you like me." She decided she wanted other guys, so we broke up. I'm going to divorce her. Even now, she's probably sleeping with some younger guy. She's an idiot. Do you want a young woman to sleep with you? God. I'm serious, Bill. You can come see me after we're done today. She gave him a sweet smile. Then she added, "If you come, you'll never want her again. I guarantee it." The next smile was not sweet. He looked at her. She went from a pretty, reliable woman to a slutty seductress in the blink of an eye. What else could he do? What else could she do? He said, "I agree." They kissed. She then led him back to work. He found it very difficult to concentrate. Various unusual events captured him and knocked him out of his stable life. They finished around 5. Mary said, "Follow me to my house. Don't get lost." They parked in a parking lot next to a garden apartment complex. Mary had a ground floor apartment with a sliding back door. As soon as they were inside, she attacked. She whispered to him, "We're going to have such a good time." And they really did. "I knew you'd be great. You're as strong as any boyfriend I've ever had. Let's eat." She put the calzone from the freezer into the oven. They waited for her to get ready. Bill asked, "How did you stay alone for so long?" She told him the story about Bobby Horton. She then told him a lot more about herself, including her affair with a woman from the local police station. She asked Bill, "What about Rose? I mean, why if she has you?" "She needed a different type of guy. She's a submissive. I did it for her when I realized. But it's not me, and we both knew it." Mary smiled at Bill. "You're not a Neanderthal. Maybe you're more like her." Bill was again surprised by Mary's insight. He was unconvinced. Maybe. The bell on the calzone rang. Mary pulled her out, and they ate her, naked in the kitchen. Then she said, "You can put the plates in the dishwasher." Bill hesitated. He looked at Mary. She looked straight at him. He stood up and took their plates to the sink, rinsed them, and put them in the dishwasher. When he turned around, he felt awkward. Mary was very pleased with this. She said, "Don't worry, Bill. I'll never tell. It's between us." Who would have thought that cleaning the kitchen could do this? Mary sat thinking. She decided to be open about what was happening. She said, "Bill, from now on you belong to me. Do you understand?" Bill felt a thrill at her words that he couldn't hide. He said, "Yes, I understand." "What do you understand, Bill?" "That I belong to you, Mary. Oh, God, you have all the power. You don't have to worry. Just obey me." "Fine." They relaxed a little. She said, "Bill, We need to think this through carefully. I don't want a total wimp in my life, but I want you in my life. We shouldn't advertise this. I know. Your children, your family, your work colleagues. It would be too much for them to understand. We can work it out, Mary. I've never been so excited in my life. You need to set our boundaries. They got up and watched the movie on Prime. Mary made him sit at her feet. When they went to bed, she said, "You are no longer my slave, until I say so again." Bill stayed all day on Sunday. They walked around, and then he cleaned the house for her naked. She said, "I could get used to it. You missed a spot on the refrigerator." On Sunday evening, they both returned to his house. Well, to the pool house. It was 7. Mary was impressed with how he arranged it. They discussed the food bank and some logistical issues. They were dressed. They made love. This was very satisfactory for both of them, and Bill seemed to have regained his masculine strength. Then the lights above the pool turned on. Bill put on his shorts and went outside. Rose looked out the kitchen door. She waved to him. He turned away. But Mary saw Rose, and she came outside, naked. She waved to Rose. Rose went outside. She said, "Hi, Mary. I see you got him." "Yeah, just needed a chance." She gave Rose a sweet smile. Rose was wearing a robe. She looked at Bill and threw him to the ground. She smiled at Bill. "I had a good time, too." Mary approached Bill. She said, "It's mine now. You can't have it anymore." Rose was stunned and angry. She was angry from the moment Mary came out naked. Rose ran inside. Mary saw this and said, "You're such a nice guy, Bill. I almost showed her the red marks on your butt, though." He said, "I'm glad you didn't. I think she got your message anyway." Mary laughed. "She'll understand soon enough." They went back inside and again made love. Rose couldn't see inside the pool house, but she could hear very well what was going on there. At first, she was furious. This bitch took her man, her husband, but when the sounds of sex reached her room, she started crying again. This was another moment when she again realized that her marriage was over. On the way home from Toby's apartment, she fell back into magical thinking. She thought she could have Bill sexually. After all, only 2 nights have passed. She thought that if she promised not to do it again, he would give in. She always managed to get him to do what she wanted. Now the young bitch seems to have completely replaced her. It was a mistake to expose his marked body in front of them. This provoked Mary to make it clear who now owned Bill, and Rose had no doubt that Bill now belonged to Mary. Rose knew what Mary discovered in Bill. It didn't take her long to take advantage of this. Bill left, until Mary doesn't want him anymore, and maybe Mary will want to keep it forever. Who knows? Rose cried herself to sleep. However, Rose was not a woman to pine needlessly. She was too narcissistic for that. On Monday morning, smelling coffee from the pool house, she got dressed and went to work. At work, she thought of a way to get back at Bill for his weakness and for leaving her. She just wanted to have fun. Now she called George. She said, "Hi, George. This is Rose." Low, seductive tone. George was indecisive. He said, "Hello. I'd like to get in touch with you again, now that we're separated." "I'm not sure, Rose. He was pretty decisive before." "Well, he has a new interest now." "Nora?" "No, not Nora. Some bitch from the food bank. She got him." "And you?" "I've had experience with a young lover. You'd be sort of a semi-young lover." "I'm flattered. But you warned me about Bill. I listened after he visited my office. I listened." "You don't have to worry about that. He doesn't have a right to me anymore. Now, he didn't do anything to my other guys. Tell you what, meet me at Gino's for dinner. At 7. "Great. See you later." George hung up and went to Nora. He really wanted Rose. There was something about her that attracted him. He thought she would do whatever he wanted. She was 10 years older than him. But Bill, He didn't think he would risk his life to have sex with Rose. He knocked on Nora's door and entered. He said, "Hi, I need some advice about my love life." Nora laughed. "It will not happen." "I didn't mean you, although I would." "Who what?" "Bill and Rose." "You want both of them. I advise against it." She giggled. "No, no, I want Rose. But before I got her, Bill scared me away. He was very convincing. Now she says they're separated. She wants me. I want her. But I want to live. So, your opinion?" Nora thought about it. She always calculated what would be most beneficial for her. She said, "Try. He's not that dangerous, especially now that he left her. She's been sleeping with 2 guys from the gym all weekend, I think. He's not going to forgive it." Well, let's see. He has a gun after all. Now he won't risk going to jail for her." George decided to go to the lion's den. He knocked on Bill's door. When he was invited, George sat down and said, "Your wife called me today. She wants to meet. She says you two are separated." Bill thought about it. He said, "Okay, we're separated. I'm not going back to her. So, 2 things. 1, you have to keep this a secret until the divorce is finalized." "Right. Good. 2nd, let her know that you consulted with me and that I did not object." George considered this. Then he said, "You're telling her there's no turning back. You're letting her sleep with me. It's insulting to me." "Not really. I warned you because I didn't want to be the laughing stock of the office. Losing face. Also, I just didn't want her to cheat. But she's already cheating. And you won't laugh at me, right?" "Right. Absolutely not. 1 more thing. Don't do anything bad to her." "Fine. Don't worry. Have a great time." So George went to dinner. He met Rose in a restaurant, a casual place. When they sat down, he said, "I want you to know that I was hesitant about Bill. But I asked him, if he would kill me for being with you. He said you could. Go ahead." Rose's face changed, first shocked and then angry. "I see. Well, Georgie, you're in for a good time. Let's have a light dinner." George grinned. They ordered salads and some wine. When they returned to his apartment, George took the lead. This was what she wanted, and he knew it. She knew he would like what he saw, and he really liked it. They spent the rest of the night. Rose was mostly happy at work. The sex was great, and she really liked George. Unlike Toby and Biggie guys she just used. But Bill, she couldn't help feeling sad about Bill. She really loved him, and when he entered her thoughts, he brought many good memories, and with them sadness. George went to work, a little wary of Bill. People change. But he didn't see Bill until noon. They met at the photocopier. Bill called George into his office. Bill said, "Are you?" "Yes," still unsure. "So how is it?" I could be. She suits me very well. Not just sex, but it's great too." "Are you in love with her? So soon?" "It's not soon. We've had a platonic courtship for a while. I'm sorry. Pretty soon anyway. And she's older. As it turns out, I like it. I have my reasons." "Are you going to see her tonight? And other nights?" "Yes. She will come to me. I will cook. Well, I'll try to cook. My advice, keep it simple. Burgers, maybe hot dogs." George nodded. He said, "You?" Rose said, "You have another woman in your life." "I have. She's great. I met her at the food bank." "Younger?" "Yes, younger than even you. She can wear me out." "Good luck. I just want to say I'm happy for Rose and I. Thank you." "George, she was going through some kind of midlife crisis, but you seem to be able to help her with that." "I hope so. You say she might cheat. I mean, to me." "I don't know. She's unpredictable right now." George cooked hot dogs, fancy ones that he bought at the market. He also bought a ready-made salad. This was okay because Rose wasn't particularly interested in food. She needed her protein. She got it. She slept with George every night that week, including Friday. She cleaned, cooked, made love all naked, and was mostly happy. George was more than happy. On Saturday, she needed things from home. George took her there. Bill and Mary were by the pool. No one could see the pool from outside the site, so they were naked. Mary wanted a tan all over her body for both of them. As Rose went upstairs to gather more things, George walked to the sliding door and looked out at the pool. He was quite impressed with what he saw. Bill was clearly in good shape and Mary was really hot, like a cheerleader. George stayed out of sight, but Bill noticed him. He got up, put on his shorts, and went to find out. He told Mary to put on a robe. George felt a surge of fear as Bill entered the house. But Bill couldn't be armed. So George said, "Hi, Bill. We just stopped by for Rose to pick up something." She could have warned me. I mean, you came with her. Mary was sunbathing. I saw it. She's sexy. Rose, who came into the kitchen, said, "Who's sexy?" George jumped. Bill laughed. He said, "George got it. Mary." Rose hugged George from behind. She said, "Which of them is the handsomest, George?" "You, Rose, without a doubt." Bill said, "Doesn't that make you the evil queen from Sleeping Beauty, Rose?" Rose was annoyed for a moment, but then laughed. One of the main things she liked about Bill was his quick wit. She still liked it. She said, "No doubt about it, I'm evil, Billy." She smiled at him. George felt uneasy. Bill noticed this. He said, "Why don't you two stay for lunch? I'll cook." He liked George's awkwardness. George just wanted to leave, but Rose said, "Great, let's go out to the pool." George felt that the situation was getting out of his control. He had to be in control, but he went to the pool with Rose and Bill. Bill said, "George, this is Mary. Mary, this is George. George is Rose's boyfriend." Mary waved her hand at him. She said, "Hello." Bill noticed that she looked George up and down, and George did the same to her. Everyone sat down. Mary said, "We could use some extra help from the food bank if you two have the time." Rose said, "I should have spent more time there with Bill." She looked at Mary. Bill smiled. "Well, Rose, Mary would still be an outsider if you kept your promises." "Yeah, I know." She turned to Mary. "I thought he loved me enough to share a little. I guess I was wrong." Bill said, "George, are you going to share Rose?" George was stunned. Bill seemed to assume that he and Rose were a couple, and after thinking about it, he liked the idea. He said, "No, I wouldn't like it." Rose moved onto his lap. She kissed him. She looked at Bill and said, "He's great." Mary said, "But George, Rose won't give you children. Maybe just one." She was a real provocateur. Bill couldn't help but smile. Rose turned pale. She said harshly, I can have children. God, Mary." Mary said, "Sorry, Rose. It all happened so quickly. I mean, how long has it been since you and Bill were happily married?" Bill said, "Another provocative question. Well, Rose?" Rose said, "I was always happy with you, Bill. You know, I had needs that you couldn't satisfy." George said, "Perhaps this is not the best time to discuss all this." He was very uncomfortable. Bill said, "Why not?" Rose said, "You may be embarrassed, Bill. Mary and I can both satisfy your needs." She gave him a wicked smile. Bill understood the direction of the conversation. He was a fool to start this conversation in front of George. But George, although smart enough to graduate from law school, was not as fast as the other three. It had not yet occurred to him what the women were talking about. Rose stood up from George's lap. She saw that George had fallen behind the conversation. She was tempted. She said, "Bill is a subordinate, George. When we were together, I was always in control, and now he belongs to Mary. Right, Mary?" George looked at Bill and the women. He was surprised. Bill, surprisingly, was not angry. He was who he was. Rose continued, "But George, Bill couldn't do for me what you do. Make me crawl and beg. It's not in his nature for long." George smiled. You and Bill were sexually incompatible, both subordinates. Now Bill felt awkward, as predicted. He said, "I could do that. Sometimes." Mary said, "Not really, Bill. Don't be embarrassed. Just enjoy it, just like we did." Bill stood up. He said, "George, I don't want this to get out in the office. It's bad enough that you're sleeping with my wife." George grinned. He said, "My lips are sealed, Bill. Honestly." Rose saw her opportunity. She grabbed George's hand and said, "Come on, big boy. Let's go upstairs. We can use the master bedroom, because you're my master." She ran away from George, who hesitated. But then he seemed to realize that he was in charge. He ran after Rose. Bill was depressed. It all threatened to be too much for him. He knew he should have been angry about the way it all happened, but he wasn't. Mary stood up and walked towards the pool house. She said, "Come with me, Billy. Time to show me how submissive you can be." The next day at work, Bill walked into George's office and closed the door. He said, "George, I really meant what I said about keeping sexual matters out of the office. I know, it makes you look weak. You are weak, though." George looked a little smug. "In one sense, I am. But ultimately, that makes me dangerous, specifically to you. If I find out what you told me, I will deal with you." "I won't tell. But you're divorcing Rose. People will know that we're together. Nora already knows. And I want to be able to go out with her. Dance, have dinner. All that. I don't see it as humiliating for you." "Me too. Just don't go around grinning." I said I wouldn't. "Well, maybe when we're alone." He grinned. Bill stood up quickly. George shuddered. Bill laughed at him. He said, "Smirks can be very dangerous, you know." He left. George was alarmed by his apparently deep-seated fear of Bill. It was that first day, with the threat of a gun. One-on-one, George could beat him maybe, but he felt that if he did, he would end up dead in an alley one day. He decided never to grin at Bill. Mary also went to work. She managed to spend class thinking about her personal life. One thing she thought about was that George was the most attractive man she had ever seen. She knew he had seen her naked. The thought of this worried her. She wondered what to do about it, because she thought she had long-term plans for Bill. He was older, but he satisfied her in bed, especially because he did everything she wanted. She had never been in a relationship like this before. She was careful not to go too far. He was a man after all, and he suffered from the loss of his wife because of her lust for handsome men, and now also to George Adonis, the perfect handsome man. However, when the four were together by the pool, she sensed that George was afraid of Bill. She wondered why this was so, because she was confident in her impression. The way he seemed wary, even nervous, around Bill. She wondered what Bill had done to cause this and was going to ask him about it. Maybe she'll flirt with George a little if they all get back together. After all, he had already seen all of her. Rose was mostly happy. She slept with George in their marital bed. Bill didn't do anything about it, so she decided to return to the house and live there with George. After all, she knew that she and George were an unlikely match. She didn't understand his infatuation with her. Even if she was his sex slave, he could have almost any woman. She decided that what she really wanted was Bill back. Forever. After some time, she would be able to control her need to submit to handsome men. She considered it a phase. If she gets Bill back, she can stop. Maybe not immediately, but gradually. So she developed long-term plans. Events unfolded over several months. A divorce hearing was scheduled in 2 weeks. Rose did not object to the divorce, so she let him pass. On the Saturday after the divorce was finalized, Mary and Rose were at the pool. Rose rented from Bill while she looked for a house. Bill went hiking and George played tennis. Rose asked Mary, "Do you like George?" "Well, sexually." "Of course, why?" "Would you like to trade?" "Would you trade George for Bill? I mean, Bill is good and all, you know, but it would be for one night, maybe a weekend. I miss Bill's submissiveness. How far have you gone with him?" Mary looked at Rose. "Far enough." "Does he cook and clean?" "Yes, always naked." "Why, Rose?" He doesn't want anything to do with you anymore. You left him. I like him. He's perfect for me. I needed new ones, so I got them. I thought he would eventually comply. I learned my lesson. And now you and George are living at his house when we hang out by the pool. This doesn't seem like a way back. You let the divorce go through. Mary, I don't believe you want him for long. I want his submissive nature back. I'll give you George." "Oh, damn, Rose. You can't just give me George. He owns you. You and Bill come next weekend. I'll send George to you. You'll seduce him. Voila, I can see the way he looks at you. Maybe he really looks that way, but you have something with him." "What?" "Mary, you're younger, just as beautiful, and he could start a family with you if you play it right. And you think you'll bring Bill back?" "Maybe. I believe he is receptive to me, especially now that we are divorced. I am not his wife. There is no more promise to break." The following weekend, Mary took Bill to the pool house where he still lived. He was used to George and Rose living in his house. And what? They paid rent. Additionally, Mary made a big impression on his work when they went to a holiday party. He didn't care that George brought Rose. People seemed to accept it all. Now he was heading to a social event by the pool as the warm weather returned. He'd been worrying about it all week. Mary seemed different, and he didn't trust anyone, not even her. Lately, he's been thinking about their relationship. He didn't want a new family. He liked what she did to him. He loved her, in a way, not as much as I loved Rose. He admitted this to himself. Even if she became slutty, so is he, after all. It was sad. But Mary balanced everything. Until now, at least. Now he had a bad feeling. His gun was not in the house. It was hidden in a small safe in the pool house. When they got to the pool house, Mary made Bill take off his clothes. He resisted. They had to communicate with Rose and George. She insisted, and he obeyed her. He liked the idea that he was doing this for her, despite his own desires. It was part of his basic nature. Bill looked at the pool. George was lying there in his loose swimming trunks. Rose told him what she was planning, so he wasn't surprised when Mary went out with Bill. He was naked, and she was wearing a translucent robe. She sat next to George, who was staring at her, and paid no attention to Bill. Mary said, "Bill, go help Rose with the cooking." Bill knew what was going on. He turned and looked at Mary. She smiled at him and waved him off. "Go." Bill turned and walked into the kitchen. Rose was waiting. She wasn't sure if he would come inside, naked and vulnerable. She wasn't sure if he would leave Mary with George. But there he was. Rose was wearing a string top and loose shorts. Barefoot. She smiled at him. She said, "Bill, George is going to sleep with your girlfriend, and I'm going to sleep with you." She said, "Just like old times, huh?" He didn't answer. Meanwhile, Mary saw Rose leading Bill away. She stood up and took off her robe. She turned and walked to the pool house. George followed her. When she reached the futon bed, she turned to him and said, "I hope you live up to your expectations." He laughed. He knew he would justify it, and he did it. Rose and Bill spent 3 hours in bed. Rose wore him down. Mary and George also spent 3 hours. Mary left after that. She was hungry. She knew that Rose had a ready-made sloppy joe on the stove, turned off. There were buns and coleslaw in the refrigerator. She made herself a plate and was eating when Rose appeared with her own plate. Mary looked at Rose and laughed. She said, "Is he still conscious?" "Yes. And George?" "No." I think he's still alive, Rose laughed. Bill came out with a plate. All three were completely naked. As they finished eating, George appeared. He was naked too. Bill looked at him. He concluded that few women he knew could resist George. Of course not these two. He said, "George, maybe you should." But he stopped. "What's the point of this?" he added. "To eat." Mary and Rose watched as George walked into the kitchen. Mary sighed. Rose was more used to it. Bill watched the women watch George. He concluded that Mary was temporarily lost to him, but that Rose would be available. When he read about dating for 40-year-old divorced men, he learned that divorced women want sex. Rose was divorced. The three of them watched as George returned with the plate. Fully naked, he looked impressive. He ate quickly and a lot. He looked at Rose. "Dessert?" She stood up and went inside. She returned a few minutes later with a chilled chocolate cream cheese cake. She had plates, and she cut the cake and passed it out. Bill thought she looked so fantastic, naked, serving cake. The next morning, Bill cooked bacon and eggs for breakfast. All four were very hungry. Then George said, "That was very nice, wasn't it, Bill?" Bill knew that George was nervous about the possibility of gun violence, but he had already passed the stage of anger. He thought about George, who slept with his wife and his new girlfriend. He decided he had to keep George a little on edge. He also realized that he, Bill, needed to evaluate his own needs and desires. Bill, smiling at George, said, "I had a great time." His tone was calm, and his gaze at George was not very reassuring. George nodded. The women were both interested in the exchange, but weren't sure what it meant. Rose asked, "Bill, where are we all now? How is this all going to work?" Mary chimed in, "Yes, for interested minds." At that moment, everyone realized that, despite his weakness and apparent inferior position, it was Bill who was in control of the situation. He turned to Mary and said, "I'm in love with you, Mary, but do you want children?" "Yes, yes, I really want to." He turned to George, "You?" "Yes." George looked at Mary, and she looked at him. Mary asked, "And you, Bill?" "I'm past that. It was good for a while." Rose chuckled. "You felt great last night." He said, "That's right, Rose. Despite all my suffering, we can talk later, you and me." Then he looked at Mary and George. All four were naked. Bill said, "Mary, why don't you and George spend some time together to see how this might work? You barely know each other. Well, except for the sex." Mary smiled at Bill. She said, "I'll always want you, Billy. I can't have George the same way I have you. But I've been thinking about how this might work in the long run. Mary, I once thought George was a jerk. You know, he was always chasing skirts, and my wife. But I think he'll probably hold on for you, and you'll never know how interpersonal relationships will turn out. I'd say give it a try, because to answer your question, I don't think we could continue like this without you looking for someone else. Or me, maybe." "Okay." She looked at George. She said, "Come on, big boy. Time to continue my thorough research." She led him to the pool house. She closed the sliding door. Rose laughed. She said, "I think George might be busy. So what now? You gave that woman away, Bill." Bill said, "I'd like to find a way forward with you, Rose. You're a woman of easy virtue. I admit, I've let go of my slutty side. It was always there, Bill, and you got a lot of pleasure out of it." "Yes, without a doubt. Rose, I forgive you for everything that has happened so far. I got a lot of pleasure from our parting. Nora, Mary." "I can't say I didn't get it." She looked a little guilty. Then her face hardened, and she looked Bill up and down. She said, "You're not George, but you'll go. He was dirty and never cleaned up after himself. And he didn't cook. Plus, you're a lot smarter." Bill laughed. "Really? You can spend the night with me or with him. Who do you choose?" "With him. Get used to it. We're divorced now. He's busy anyway. And Billy, I'd choose you over those guys from the gym, even two of them at once. Fair. Rose stood up. She pointed to Bill. Time for you to clean the kitchen. Bill said, Yes, Rose. 1 year later, Rose was dressed smartly as she walked down the aisle. Bill was wearing a nice suit when he followed her. They sat in the front row. The music started playing and Mary's father led her down the aisle. She looked like this, beautiful in her wedding dress. George wore a traditional tuxedo. His hair was pulled back into a ponytail. He looked at his bride walking down the aisle. Mary was delighted. She nodded to Bill and Rose as she passed by. She looked at her mother. She had a secret. The day before she came to Bill's house by the pool. Rose knew this. She gave Bill a one-time pass. On the morning of the wedding, Mary woke up Bill. Bill kissed her. If this guy treats you badly, you can always come back here. I know. The exchange of vows took place a little after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. George made the traditional oath to love, respect, and obey, renouncing all others. Mary vowed to love and respect George, to support him with all her heart, and to put him above all others. Rose and Bill noticed the difference, but George didn't. His mom noticed. His dad isn't. His dad was busy staring at the bride, and for the bridesmaids. Everyone danced with each other at the reception, which was held at a local hotel. George danced with Rose twice. Every time he was a gentleman. George's father danced with Mary, Rose, and 2 bridesmaids. He wasn't much of a gentleman, but he wasn't excessive. And he was big and blonde, like his son. The bridesmaids didn't mind him keeping them close. Bill mostly danced with Rose, but he also danced with Mary twice. He was a gentleman. But at the end of the last dance, Mary whispered to him, You are still a part of me, Billy, and I feel you. Mary and George left for the Bahamas the next morning. When Rose and Bill returned to his house after the reception, Rose looked at Bill and said, I saw you holding her close. Take off your clothes. Bill smiled at her and said, Yes, Rose. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.